Black nurse always brought breakfast to old homeless man. One day, military men arrived at her door. For 6 months, Olivia Clayton brought breakfast to an old homeless man every single morning. Eggs wrapped in foil, sometimes oatmeal, always coffee in a silver thermos. 5:45 a.m. Same bus stop 3 blocks from her apartment in Ohio, where the storefronts had been shuttered so long the 4 lease signs had faded to white. She was 38, black, a nurse's aide pulling double shifts on aching feet that never fully recovered. He was in his late 60s, white, with a beard like winter, and eyes sharper than anyone noticed. He told stories about aircraft and missions, about people who didn't exist on paper. Stories nobody believed. Then one morning, 3 men knocked on her door, and everything she thought she knew about Kurt Dave collapsed. Before I dive deep into this story, please hit that subscribe button real quick and hit the notification so you don't miss other amazing stories I bring to you here. Subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. The knock came at 6:04 a.m. Olivia froze in her kitchen, one hand wrapped around a coffee mug, the other holding her phone. She hadn't even left for work yet. The knock wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, measured, official. The kind of knock that didn't belong to a neighbor, didn't belong to a delivery driver running late. It was the kind of knock that made your stomach drop before you even reached the door. She set down the mug, wiped her palm on her scrubs. Through the peephole, she saw them. 2 men in military dress uniforms, pressed, decorated, the kind of uniforms you only saw at ceremonies or funerals. Between them stood a 3rd man in a dark suit, hands clasped in front of him, expression serious but not unkind. They stood in the hallway like they'd been standing there for hours, like they had nowhere else to be. Olivia's breath caught. Dave. Her mind raced. Had something happened? Had he been arrested? Was he dead? Had she done something wrong by helping him? Had someone reported her? Had he reported her? She unlocked the deadbolt, opened the door. The tallest officer, a colonel, she realized, noting the silver eagle on his shoulder, met her eyes. Ms. Olivia Clayton. Her throat tightened. Yes. We're here to speak with you about a man named Kurt Dave. The name landed like a stone in still water. Kurt Dave, the old man from the bus stop. The one with the worn brown coat and the backpack that looked like it carried his whole life. The one who never asked for money, never held a sign, just sat there watching the world pass by with eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Olivia gripped the doorframe. Is he? She stopped, started again. Did something happen to him? The colonel exchanged a glance with the man in the suit. Ma'am, the suited man said, his voice low and measured. We need to talk about what you did for him. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. What she did for him? She'd brought him breakfast, that was all. Eggs and toast. Coffee. Conversation while she waited for the bus. 10 minutes a day, sometimes less. But the way they were looking at her, like she'd done something extraordinary. Or something dangerous, made her realize she didn't know Kurt Dave at all. She stepped back from the door. You should come in. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story already has your attention, hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss how this ends. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story today, share it with them. Now, let me take you back 6 months. The first time Olivia noticed him, she walked past. It was late October, and the mornings had started turning cold. She was running late. Alarm hadn't gone off. Shower took too long. Couldn't find her badge. The usual chaos of a life held together by routine and willpower. The bus stop sat outside a row of shuttered storefronts 3 blocks from her apartment. A laundromat that closed 2 years ago, a check-cashing place with plywood over the windows, a corner store that had been coming soon for as long as she could remember. And there, on the bench, sat a man, older, white beard, tangled but not wild, a brown coat that had seen better decades. His backpack rested at his feet like an anchor. He wasn't asleep. He was just sitting, watching. His eyes tracked her as she passed, and for a moment their gazes met. Olivia looked away first. She told herself what everyone tells themselves. I don't have enough. I can barely take care of myself. It was true. At 38, Olivia had learned that life didn't slow down just because you were tired. She worked as a nurse's aide at a regional hospital. Long shifts, understaffed floors, patients who needed more than the system allowed her to give. She was divorced, no children, living alone in a small apartment she kept neat but plain. Rent was rising. Student loans still haunted her from a degree she'd never finished. Her car rattled every time she started it, and she'd stopped checking the check engine light months ago. Her life ran on routine, because routine was what kept everything from unraveling. The second time she saw the man, she walked past again. The third time, she stopped. She'd made extra breakfast that morning, eggs and toast, wrapped in foil because she'd run out of containers. She'd meant to eat it at the hospital, but something in her hesitated as she approached the bus stop. He was there, same bench, same coat, same backpack. This time, his eyes didn't just track her. They waited. Before she fully understood what she was doing, Olivia held out the foil packet. I made too much, she said. He looked at the packet, then at her face. For a long moment, he didn't move. You don't owe me anything, he said quietly. His voice was rougher than she expected, but clear, measured, like a man who chose his words carefully because he'd once been trained to. I know, Olivia replied. I'm offering. He took it with both hands, slowly, like it was something fragile. Thank you, she nodded, unsure what else to say. I'm Olivia. Dave, he said. Kurt, Dave. She almost walked away then, almost went back to the routine of not seeing him, not getting involved, not adding another weight to a life already stretched thin. But something about the way he'd said thank you, with dignity, not desperation, made her pause. How do you take your coffee? She asked. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Black, he said. If you're asking. I'm asking. The next morning, she brought a thermos, and the morning after that, and every morning after that for 6 months. Through the first frost, through the holidays she spent alone, through the January ice that made the walk treacherous, and the February thaw that turned the sidewalks to rivers. She didn't know why she kept going. Maybe because he never asked her to. Maybe because their 10-minute conversations about nothing, about everything, had become the only part of her day that felt like it belonged to her. Maybe because Kurt Dave looked at her like she was a person worth seeing. And in a world that had stopped seeing her a long time ago, that mattered more than she could explain. But Olivia didn't know who Kurt Dave really was. She didn't know about the missions, the aircraft, the people he'd flown to places that didn't exist on any map. She didn't know that the stories he told weren't delusions. They were memories. And she didn't know that one day he would hand her a sealed envelope and make her promise to speak for him if anyone ever came looking. She kept that promise. And now, standing in her kitchen at 6:04 in the morning, with 3 men in her doorway, Olivia was about to find out why 6 months earlier. At 38 years old, Olivia Clayton had mastered the art of invisible labor. She woke every morning at 5 o'clock a.m., not because she wanted to, but because the world demanded it. Shower in the dark so she wouldn't fully wake up. Scrubs laid out the night before so she wouldn't have to think. Coffee brewing while she braided her locks back, tight and practical, the way the hospital preferred. Her apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a building where the elevator worked maybe half the time and the hallway always smelled like someone else's dinner. She kept it clean, kept it quiet, kept it exactly the way a woman keeps a space when she's learned that no one else is coming to help. Divorced 3 years now, no children, no pets. Just Olivia, and the hum of the refrigerator, and the ache in her feet that never fully went away. She worked as a nurse's aide at a regional hospital 20 minutes by bus. Long shifts, 12 hours, sometimes 14 when they were short-staffed, which was always. She lifted patients twice her size. She cleaned up messes no one thanked her for. She held hands when families couldn't be there and bit her tongue when doctors talked past her like she was furniture. The pay was enough to survive. Not enough to live. Her car had died in August. Transmission, the mechanic said, shaking his head like he was delivering a diagnosis. She'd sold it for parts and started taking the bus. Added 40 minutes to her commute each way. Added another layer of tired to a life already running on fumes. But routine kept her upright. Routine was the scaffolding that held everything together. So every morning, Olivia made breakfast. Eggs, usually. Toast, if she had bread. Coffee in a thermos she'd bought at Goodwill for $2. She ate standing at the counter because sitting down felt like giving in to the exhaustion. Then she walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. The first time she saw him, she almost didn't. Late October. The air had turned sharp overnight. That first real cold that reminds you winter is coming, whether you're ready or not. Olivia was running late. Alarm hadn't gone off. Shower ran cold. Couldn't find her badge. The usual small disasters that pile up when you're already stretched thin. The bus stop sat in front of a row of shuttered storefronts. A laundromat closed 2 years ago. A check-cashing place with plywood over the windows. The kind of block that used to be something and now was just waiting. And there, on the bench, sat a man. Older, late 60s, maybe early 70s. White beard, more gray than white. Tangled but not wild. A brown coat that had seen decades of wear. His backpack sat at his feet like it held everything he owned. Because it probably did. He wasn't asleep, wasn't holding a sign, wasn't asking for anything. He was just sitting, watching the street with eyes that seemed sharper than they had any right to be. Olivia walked past. She told herself what she always told herself. I don't have enough. I can barely take care of myself. It was true. Her checking account had $47 in it. Her rent was due in 6 days. The student loans she'd taken out for a nursing degree she never finished still sent letters every month, polite and relentless. She didn't have room in her life for another person's struggle. The second morning, she walked past again. Faster this time, eyes forward. The third morning, she made the mistake of looking. He was watching her, not aggressive, not pleading, just seeing her. The way you see someone when you've learned to pay attention to the world because the world stopped paying attention to you. Their eyes met for half a second. Olivia looked away first, but something snagged in her chest. A small hook she couldn't quite shake loose. The fourth morning, she'd made extra breakfast without meaning to. 2 portions of eggs, 2 pieces of toast. She'd wrapped the second portion in foil, thinking she'd eat it at lunch. But when she reached the bus stop and saw him there, same bench, same coat, same quiet dignity, her feet stopped. He looked up. "Keep walking," she told herself. "You don't have enough." But her hands were already moving, holding out the foil packet before her mind caught up. "I made too much," she said. Her voice came out softer than she intended. He looked at the packet, then at her face. For a long moment, he didn't move. "You don't owe me anything," he said. His voice was rough but clear, measured, like a man who'd once been trained to choose his words carefully. "I know," Olivia said. "I'm offering." He took it with both hands, slowly, like it was something fragile. "Thank you," she nodded, suddenly unsure what to do with her hands. "I'm Olivia." "Dave," he said. "Kurt, Dave." The bus came. She got on, but all the way to work, she thought about the way he'd said thank you, with dignity, not desperation, like he was accepting a gift, not charity. That night, she set out 2 portions of eggs. She didn't say it out loud, didn't make a promise, didn't write it down. But somewhere deep in her chest, Olivia had already decided. She was going back tomorrow. The routine settled into her life like a second heartbeat. Every morning, Olivia woke at 5 o'clock, made 2 breakfasts, walked 3 blocks, handed Dave a foil packet and a thermos of coffee. They talked for 10 minutes, sometimes less, sometimes more if the bus ran late. Then she climbed aboard the 6:15 and rode to work, carrying the warmth of their conversation like a stone in her pocket. It wasn't much. 10 minutes. A few dollars worth of eggs and bread. But it became the part of her day she looked forward to most. November came cold and stayed that way. Dave never complained, never shivered in front of her, never made her feel guilty for going home to a heated apartment while he stayed on that bench. But Olivia noticed things, the way his hands shook when he unscrewed the thermos lid, the cough that had started small and grown persistent. She started packing extra. Oatmeal on the coldest days. It held heat longer. An extra pair of gloves she'd found at the dollar store. A scarf she told herself she didn't need anymore. "You shouldn't," Dave said when she handed him the scarf. He held it like it was something precious, something he didn't deserve. "You don't get to decide what I do with my kindness," Olivia replied. He laughed then, a soft, surprised sound like he'd forgotten he knew how. "You're stubborn," he said. "I'm a nurse," she shot back. Same thing. The conversations deepened as the weeks passed. At first, they talked about nothing. The weather, the bus schedule, the way the city had changed since the factories closed. Safe topics, surface level. But somewhere around the 3rd week, Dave started telling stories. "Back in my flying days," he said one morning, staring past her at something only he could see, "we moved people who weren't supposed to exist." Olivia paused, thermos halfway extended. "What do you mean?" "Senators, generals, scientists." He took the coffee, wrapped both hands around it. People whose names disappeared the moment they stepped off the aircraft. No manifests, no records, just ghosts. She didn't know what to say. It sounded like a movie, like a dream someone had and couldn't shake. "That must have been something," she offered carefully. Dave's eyes flicked to hers, sharp, clear. "You don't believe me." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's all right. Nobody does." Olivia sat down on the bench beside him. She had 4 minutes before her bus. "Tell me more," she said. He told her about aircraft she'd never heard of, about night flights over countries that weren't on any map she'd seen in school, about 3-letter agencies and men in suits who never gave their real names. "I worked for people who don't exist," Dave said once, his voice low, "and when they were done with me, I stopped existing too." Olivia listened. She didn't correct him, didn't suggest he see someone, didn't do what everyone else probably did. Dismiss him as confused, as mentally ill, as just another old man whose mind had wandered away from reality. Maybe it had. Maybe the stories were delusions built from loneliness and cold. But the way he told them, precise, controlled, never contradicting himself, made her wonder. And the things he noticed made her wonder more. "Camera on the corner," he said one morning, nodding toward a traffic light. "Replaced last week, different model, higher resolution." Olivia squinted. She'd never noticed a camera there at all. "You pay attention to that stuff?" "People like me don't get lost by accident," Dave said quietly. "Sometimes we're hidden. Sometimes we're erased. And sometimes—" He stopped, took a long sip of coffee. "Sometimes we just fall through the cracks and no one bothers to look." By December, Olivia was eating less so Dave could eat more. She didn't think about it in those terms. She just adjusted, smaller portions for herself. Skipped lunches when the month ran long. Put the extra toward eggs, bread, instant oatmeal. Her electric bill went unpaid for 3 weeks, then 4. She told herself it was fine. Winter bills were always high. She'd catch up. But the truth sat heavy in her chest. She was choosing him over herself. And she didn't know why. Didn't know what it was about Kurt Dave that made her keep coming back, keep giving, keep seeing him when the rest of the world looked straight through. One morning in late December, Olivia handed Dave his breakfast just as a group passed behind her on the sidewalk. 2 men in military fatigues. One in a dark suit. They walked briskly, eyes forward, not glancing at the bench or the homeless man or the black woman in scrubs handing over a foil packet. Olivia didn't notice them, but Dave did. His eyes tracked them down the block. His hand tightened on the thermos. "Dave, you okay?" He blinked, looked back at her. The sharpness in his gaze faded, replaced by something softer, sadder. "I'm fine," he said. "Just ghosts." Olivia frowned. "Ghosts? Old ones?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing you need to worry about." Her bus arrived. She squeezed his shoulder, a habit now, something she did without thinking, and climbed aboard. She didn't see Dave watch those men until they turned the corner and disappeared. She didn't see the way his hands trembled as he unwrapped his breakfast. And she didn't hear him whisper, so quiet it was almost nothing, "They're still looking." The bench was empty on a Monday morning in late January. Olivia stood there with the foil packet in one hand, thermos in the other, staring at the space where Dave should have been. No cardboard beneath the bench, no backpack, no worn brown coat, just the cold metal seat and a scattering of dead leaves. She waited through one bus, then another. The third one came and went, and still she stood there, her breath fogging in the frozen air, a feeling she recognized from hospital hallways settling into her chest. Something was wrong. She told herself not to panic. People moved, homeless people especially, shelters filled up, police cleared blocks, weather pushed them to different corners of the city. Dave could be anywhere. He could be fine. But the knot in her stomach wouldn't loosen. That night after her shift, Olivia stopped by the Mercy Street shelter, 10 blocks out of her way. Her feet were screaming by the time she reached the front desk. "I'm looking for someone," she said to the woman behind the counter. "Kurt Dave, older white man, late 60s, usually stays near the bus stop on Clayton." The woman typed without looking up. "No one by that name checked in." "Can you check again, please?" A sigh. More typing. A shake of the head. Sorry, honey. If he's not in the system, I can't help you. Olivia called 3 hospitals that night. None would release information without a family connection or patient ID. Privacy laws, they said. Policy. She understood. She worked in healthcare. She knew the rules. But knowing didn't make it easier. 3 days passed. 4. A week. Every morning, Olivia walked to the bus stop with 2 breakfasts. Every morning, the bench was empty. By the 5th day, she'd stopped bringing the extra food. It felt foolish, carrying hope wrapped in foil. But she still looked. Every time the bus passed that corner, her eyes went to the bench. Empty, empty, empty. On the 8th day, she left a note in a paper bag where he used to sit. Hope you're okay. Oh, it felt pathetic. A message in a bottle thrown into a sea that didn't care. She didn't expect it to matter. On the 10th day, he was back. Olivia almost missed her stop. She'd been staring out the window, not really seeing, when the familiar brown coat registered in her peripheral vision. She pulled the cord so hard the driver shot her a look. By the time she reached the bench, her heart was pounding. Dave. He looked up slowly. Too slowly. He was thinner, his face more hollow, his cheeks sunken in a way that spoke of days without proper food. The sharp clarity she'd come to expect in his eyes was dimmer now, still there, but buried under something heavy. Exhaustion, maybe, or something worse. Miss Olivia? His voice rasped like sandpaper on wood. She crouched beside him, hands hovering like she wanted to touch him, but wasn't sure she should. Where were you? I checked shelters. I called hospitals. No one knew anything. Had some business to attend to. He didn't meet her eyes. I'm all right now. You don't look all right. I'm upright. That counts. He tried to smile. It didn't work. That's when Olivia noticed his hand. A fresh scar ran across the back of it, pink, precise, too clean to be from a fall or a fight. It looked surgical, recent. The kind of wound that came from an operating room, not the street. What happened to your hand? Dave pulled his sleeve down quickly. Nothing. Old injury acting up. Dave, I said I'm fine. His voice was sharper than she'd ever heard it, almost harsh. Olivia sat back. Hurt flickered across her face before she could hide it. Dave saw it. His expression softened. I'm sorry. He exhaled slowly. I didn't mean it's been a hard week. I was worried about you. I know. He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his eyes shifted. A decision being made. That's why I need to ask you something. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. White, slightly crumpled, with an address written in shaky handwriting on the front. He held it out to her. If something happens to me, he said quietly, I need you to mail this. Olivia stared at the envelope. What do you mean, if something happens? Just promise me. Dave, you're scaring me. Promise me, Olivia. The use of her full name, no miss, no softness, made her breath catch. She'd never heard him sound like this, urgent, almost desperate. She took the envelope. It was light, a single sheet of paper, maybe 2. I promise. Dave's shoulders loosened. He leaned back against the bench like the weight of the world had shifted, just slightly, off his chest. Don't open it, he said. Not unless you have to. Olivia nodded. She slid the envelope into her bag without looking at it. She wanted to ask more, wanted to demand answers, but the look on Dave's face, tired, grateful, and something else she couldn't name, told her this wasn't the time. "I'll be here tomorrow," she said instead, "with breakfast." Dave smiled. A real one this time, small but genuine. "I know you will." But as Olivia climbed onto her bus, she couldn't shake the feeling that had settled into her bones. Time was running out, and she didn't know how much they had left. It happened on a Thursday morning in late February. Olivia was handing Dave his thermos when his hand started to shake. Not the usual cold weather tremor she'd grown used to, this was different. Violent. Uncontrollable. The thermos slipped from his fingers and clattered against the sidewalk, coffee spreading in a dark stain across the concrete. "Dave?" His eyes went unfocused. His knees buckled. Olivia caught him before he hit the ground, her training kicking in before her fear could catch up. She lowered him onto the bench, one hand behind his head, the other pressing against his chest to feel his heartbeat. Rapid. Irregular. Wrong. "Dave, can you hear me? Dave!" His lips moved, but no sound came out. His skin was gray, clammy, cold, in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. Olivia pulled out her phone and dialed 911. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. It felt like an hour. Olivia rode in the back, holding Dave's hand while the paramedics worked around her. She answered their questions mechanically: age, medical history, medications. She didn't know most of it. She didn't know anything, really, except his name and the way he took his coffee. At the hospital, they wheeled him through the emergency doors, and Olivia followed until a nurse stopped her with a firm hand. Family only past this point. Olivia hesitated. What was she, a friend? A stranger who brought him breakfast? "I'm the one who called it in. He doesn't have anyone else." "Are you listed as next of kin?" "He's homeless. He doesn't have next of kin." The nurse's expression didn't change. "Then you'll have to wait in the lobby. Someone will update you when they can." Olivia wanted to argue, wanted to push past, and stay with him, hold his hand, make sure he wasn't alone. But she knew the rules. She worked in a hospital just like this one. She knew how the system worked. So she sat in the plastic chair and waited. 3 hours later, a social worker found her. Young, tired, clipboard clutched against her chest like armor. "You're here for the John Doe? The older gentleman?" "His name is Kurt Dave," Olivia said. "And yes," the social worker made a note, "we're trying to determine placement. He's stable for now, but he'll need extended care. Do you know if he has insurance, Medicaid, any family we can contact?" "No, no insurance, no family that I know of." The social worker's pen paused. "That complicates things." "He's a veteran," Olivia said. The words came out before she fully thought them through. She didn't know for certain. Dave had never said it directly. But the stories, the way he carried himself, the precision in his speech, like a man trained to be careful with words. It was a guess. But it was all she had. The social worker frowned. "We don't have any documentation of military service." "Then check again." Olivia stood. Her voice was harder now, sharper. The voice she used when doctors dismissed her observations, when administrators tried to cut corners with patients who couldn't advocate for themselves. "Run his name through the VA system. Kurt Dave, DAV. Ma'am, without proper documentation, he served this country." Olivia stepped closer, and the social worker took an involuntary step back. "He's not a John Doe. He's not a number. He's a person, and I'm asking you to do your job and look." The social worker stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded and walked away. 20 minutes later, everything changed. A different woman approached, older, more senior, her expression carefully neutral, in a way that made Olivia's stomach tighten. "Ms. Clayton?" "Yes." "I'm Patricia Vance, Patient Services Director." She gestured toward a private room off the main hallway. "Could you come with me, please?" Olivia followed, her heart hammering. The room was small, a desk, 2 chairs, a computer screen angled away from her. Patricia sat down and folded her hands. "We ran Mr. Dave's information through our systems," she said slowly, "and through the VA database. And," Patricia hesitated, "his file is heavily restricted." "What does that mean?" "It means there are portions we can't access, portions that are classified." She turned the screen slightly, not enough for Olivia to read, but enough to see the blocks of redacted text. Black bars where information should be. "Mr. Dave appears to have served in a capacity that required significant security clearance. The details are beyond what our system can retrieve." Olivia stared at the screen, at the black bars, at the fragments of text visible between them, dates, location codes, acronyms she didn't recognize. "So he was telling the truth," she whispered. "I'm sorry?" "Nothing." Olivia shook her head. "What happens now?" "He's being transferred to a VA facility. They'll have the resources to care for him properly." Patricia paused. "You should know, his condition is serious. The doctors are doing what they can, but—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They let her see him. Dave lay in the hospital bed, smaller than she'd ever seen him. Machines beeped around him, tubes snaking from his arms, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Olivia sat beside him and took his hand. "You weren't confused," she said softly. "All those stories, the aircraft, the missions, the people who don't exist." Her voice cracked. "You were telling me the truth, and I didn't believe you." Dave's eyes fluttered open, just barely. His gaze found hers, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "You listened," he rasped. "That's more than most." Tears blurred her vision. "I should have done more." "You did enough." His fingers tightened around hers, weak but deliberate. "You saw me, Olivia, when no one else did." She stayed until the nurses made her leave. She stayed until they wheeled him away to a facility she couldn't follow him to, and all the way home, clutching the envelope he'd given her weeks ago, still sealed, still waiting, Olivia carried the weight of everything she hadn't understood. She had seen him, but she hadn't seen enough. And now, she wasn't sure how much time she had left to make it right. Dave died on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after they transferred him to the VA facility. Olivia was there. She'd visited every day after her shifts, 40 minutes by bus each way, her feet aching, her body exhausted. But she went anyway. She brought him things he couldn't use anymore. Coffee he couldn't drink, newspapers he couldn't read, conversation he could barely follow. It didn't matter. She went because showing up was all she had left to give. The nurses knew her by name by the end of the first week. They stopped asking if she was family. They just let her in. On that last Tuesday, she sat beside his bed reading aloud from a newspaper. Something about the weather, something about a local election, nothing that mattered. When the rhythm of the machines changed. She knew the sound, had heard it too many times in her years at the hospital. The slowing beep, the flattening line, the silence that followed. Dave's hand was still in hers when he stopped breathing. She didn't cry, not then. She just sat there, holding his hand. feeling the warmth slowly leave his fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, "for the mornings, for the stories, for seeing me too." The nurses came, did what they needed to do, asked her gentle questions she answered on autopilot. No family to notify, no next of kin. Just Olivia Clayton, emergency contact, the woman who'd brought him breakfast for 6 months and stayed until the end. She signed the papers they needed signed, collected his belongings, a plastic bag containing his coat, his empty backpack, a few worn photographs she didn't look at, and then she went home. The envelope sat on her kitchen counter for 3 days. Olivia walked past it every morning, looked at it every night, picked it up twice, and set it down again without opening it. She'd promised not to open it unless she had to. But Dave was gone now. And the weight of that envelope, light as it was, had become unbearable. On the 3rd night, she sat at her kitchen table, poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink, and slid her finger under the seal. Inside were 2 items. The first was a letter, handwritten on lined paper, the penmanship shaky but legible. "To whom it may concern. My name is Kurt David Fletcher. Service number 427-88-6112. I served my country for 31 years in capacities I am not permitted to disclose. When my service ended, I was told my records would be sealed for national security purposes. I understood. I accepted it. What I did not accept was being forgotten. I am writing this letter to ensure that one person is remembered. Olivia Clayton. For 6 months, this woman brought me breakfast every morning. She did not know who I was. She did not ask for anything in return. She simply saw a man the world had discarded and chose to treat him with dignity. I have worked with generals. I have briefed senators. I've carried secrets that will never be declassified. And I am telling you now that the kindness of Olivia Clayton is worth more than all of it. If you are reading this, I am likely gone. I ask only that someone acknowledge what she did. Not for glory, not for reward, but because quiet kindness should not go unwitnessed. She saw me when no one else did. Please see her too. Kurt David Fletcher. The second item was a photograph. Dave, younger, standing straight in a military uniform she didn't round pussy'd recognize. Beside him stood 3 men in suits, their faces blurred but their postures radiating authority. Behind them, an aircraft she'd never seen before, sleek and angular. On the back of the photo, in the same shaky handwriting, Operation Nightfall, 1987. The others are gone now. I'm the last. Olivia set the photograph down. Her hands were trembling. All those stories, the aircraft, the missions, the people who didn't exist on paper, he'd been telling the truth, every word. And she'd listened, but she hadn't believed. She mailed the letter the next morning. The address on the envelope led to a government office in Washington, D.C. No name, just a department number. Olivia didn't expect a response. Didn't expect anyone to care about a dead homeless man and the woman who'd brought him eggs and coffee. She mailed it because she'd promised. That was 3 months ago. Now, standing in her kitchen at 6:04 in the morning, with 3 men in her doorway, Olivia understood. Someone had received the letter. Someone had read it. Someone had come. Mr. Dave wasn't just homeless, the man in the suit said. His voice was measured, careful, the voice of someone trained to deliver difficult information. He was intelligence, deep cover operations, primarily overseas. His service record was classified at the highest levels. When he retired, he was supposed to receive full benefits, housing assistance, ongoing support. What happened? Olivia asked. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The system failed him. The man's jaw tightened. His records were sealed so thoroughly that when he fell through the cracks, no one could find him. No one knew who he was. No one— He stopped, took a breath. No one except you. The colonel, the tall one with the silver eagles on his shoulders, stepped forward. Ms. Clayton, Kurt Fletcher's letter reached the Secretary of Defense's office 6 weeks ago. It triggered a formal review, an investigation, and a long-overdue recognition of his service. Olivia's throat tightened. He deserved better. Yes, ma'am, he did. The colonel's voice softened. But in his final months, he had you, and according to his letter, that mattered more than anything the government could have given him. The man in the suit handed her a card. There will be a memorial, a fund established in his name. We'd like you to be involved, if you're willing. Olivia took the card. Her fingers were numb. He just wanted to be seen, she said quietly. That's all he ever wanted. You gave him that. The colonel held her gaze. You gave him dignity when the rest of us forgot he existed. The men left. Olivia stood in her kitchen, holding the card, staring at the door. And for the first time since Dave died, she let herself cry. The investigation made the news. Not front-page headlines. Kurt David Fletcher's story was too classified for that. But enough. A small article in the Washington Post about a forgotten veteran whose service had been buried so deep that he died homeless. A segment on the local Ohio news about systemic failures in the VA. A Pentagon spokesperson acknowledging gaps in care and promising reforms. Olivia watched none of it. She heard about it secondhand, from co-workers, from her landlord, from the nurse at the VA facility who'd called to offer condolences and mentioned, almost in passing, that people were asking questions now. Good, Olivia thought. Let them ask. But she didn't want to be part of the asking. Didn't want cameras or interviews or her name attached to a story that wasn't really hers. She'd done what she'd done because it was right, not because she wanted recognition. Dave had understood that. It was why he'd written the letter the way he had, not to make her famous, but to make sure someone witnessed her. There was a difference. The Memorial Fund was established in April. The Kurt David Fletcher Foundation, they called it. Dedicated to identifying and supporting homeless veterans whose records had been lost, sealed, or mishandled. A small office in Columbus. A hotline. A team of volunteers trained to navigate the bureaucratic maze that had swallowed Dave whole. They asked Olivia to join the board. She said no. I'm a nurse's aide, she told the woman who called, some administrator from Washington, with a voice like polished silver. I work 12-hour shifts. I take the bus. I don't know anything about foundations or boards. Ms. Clayton, your story is inspiring. People want to hear. Dave's story is inspiring, Olivia interrupted. Not mine. I just brought him breakfast. There was a pause on the line. That's exactly why people need to hear from you. Olivia considered it. For about 3 seconds. I'll think about it, she said, which they both knew meant no. She did accept one thing, an invitation to the memorial. It was held at a veterans cemetery outside Dayton on a Saturday morning in May. Gray skies, a threat of rain that never quite arrived. Folding chairs arranged on the grass. A flag-draped coffin that held nothing. Dave had been cremated weeks ago, his ashes scattered according to wishes he'd apparently filed decades before. Back when he still existed in the system. Olivia sat in the second row. She wore her one good dress, black, simple, purchased for her grandmother's funeral 8 years ago. Around her sat people she didn't know. military officials, government representatives, a handful of older men who looked like they'd served alongside Dave in whatever shadows he had once inhabited. The speeches were respectful, measured. They spoke of sacrifice and service, of a man who'd given everything and received nothing in return. They didn't mention the bus stop, the brown coat, the way he'd held a foil-wrapped breakfast like it was something precious. They didn't know those parts of him, only Olivia did. When they asked if anyone else wanted to speak, she stood. She hadn't planned to, hadn't prepared anything, but her legs carried her to the front. And when she turned to face the small crowd, the words came. "I didn't know who Dave was," she said. "Not really. I knew he liked his coffee black. I knew he had stories that sounded impossible. I knew that when I handed him breakfast every morning, he always said thank you like he meant it." She paused, swallowed. "I thought I was helping him. Turns out he was helping me too. He reminded me that people are worth seeing, even when, especially when, the world tells you to look away." She didn't cry. Her voice didn't break. He didn't need saving. He needed remembering. And I'm glad I got to do that, even if it wasn't enough. She returned to her seat. The colonel from that morning at her door caught her eye and nodded once, slow and solemn. That was all. Life went back to normal, or something close to it. Olivia still woke at 5 o'clock a.m., still made breakfast, still walked 3 blocks to catch the 6:15 bus. Her feet still ached. Her bills still piled up. The world still spun on its axis, indifferent and relentless. But something had shifted. Something small and hard to name. She noticed people now, the ones everyone else walked past. On a morning in late June, Olivia arrived at the bus stop and found someone sitting on Dave's bench. A woman, this time, younger than Dave, maybe 50, maybe less. Hard to tell with the weathering that street life carved into faces. She wore a men's flannel shirt, 3 sizes too big, and clutched a plastic bag against her chest like it held everything she owned. Because it probably did. Olivia hesitated, just for a moment. Then she sat down beside her. "I made too much breakfast this morning," she said, holding out a foil packet. "You want this?" The woman looked at the packet, then at Olivia's face, suspicious, guarded, waiting for the catch. "You don't owe me anything," the woman said. Olivia smiled. The words were so familiar they ached. "I know," she said. "I'm offering." The woman took the packet, held it with both hands. "Thank you. I'm Olivia." A pause. Then, quietly, "Maria." The bus arrived. Olivia stood, shouldered her bag, and climbed aboard. Through the window, she watched Maria unwrap the foil, watched her take the first bite, watched her shoulders loosen, just slightly, the way a person's body relaxes when they realize they've been seen. Olivia settled into her seat. She didn't know Maria's story, didn't know what had brought her to that bench, what she'd lost, what she was carrying. But she knew this. Tomorrow morning, she'd make 2 breakfasts again. Not because it would fix anything, not because she could save anyone, but because small, faithful kindness, done quietly, consistently, has a way of outlasting everything. Dave had taught her that, and some lessons, once learned, can't be unlearned. The bus pulled away. The morning sun broke through the clouds, and somewhere, in a cemetery outside Dayton, a flag rippled in the wind over a man who had finally been remembered. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that subscribe button, because this channel tells stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and you don't want to miss the next one. Second, like this video so more people can find it. And third, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And who in your life needs to hear this story? Share it with them, because kindness isn't meant to be kept. It's meant to be passed on. Just like Olivia did. Just like Dave hoped we would.